Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. In this video, we're going to be ranking all of the killers who donned the iconic Ghostface mask. Let's get into it. So this should go without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. These are obviously just my opinions, and I'm in no way claiming this is a factual, objective ranking. And you might actually be surprised at how some of these fall on here, because my ranking of these movies is not a reflection of how I rank the killers. Obviously, the movies they're in and how they're utilized is a factor, but it's not the only factor, and it's definitely not the biggest factor. And also, other than my bottom two, I do like all of them. So from 7 on, try not to take the numerical placement to heart. I just think some are a little better than others. I like all of them though. But with all that being said, let's hop right into it. And coming in at number 9 is Charlie Walker. I was going back and forth between my number 9 and my number 8 because I think both of them are pretty weak characters in terms of their revelation as Ghostface. But in terms of how his character is utilized as a whole in the movie he's in, I think Charlie is actually a better Ghostface than my number 8. But this is a Ghostface ranking, so I'm trying to be as objective as possible on my already subjective opinion. And I'm trying to grade them specifically just on how they're utilized after they're revealed and their accomplishments or lack thereof as the killer. And for me, Charlie is just the weakest of all of them. He's literally just Jill's pet. Sure, he sounds impressive when you look back at that movie and realize he pretty much did 100% of the killing, but all that just goes right out the window when he's revealed and you realize just how much of a beta male this dude is. It's sad. It's actually really pathetic, and his motive freaking sucks. He quite literally is just doing all of this to get the girl. And then to add insult to injury, they literally kill him off like almost immediately after he's revealed. It's not handled very well at all. I feel like they could have come up with something a little better than that. But again, I do like his character as a whole. I like how they make him one of our Randy substitutes alongside Kirby. He's the exposition giving us the rules, and she's the movie buff. And combined, they basically make Randy. And I do think it's well done, but unfortunately, that's just not enough to save him in this ranking. So he sits right here, dead last. But at number 8, we have my other least favorite killer, Mickey Altieri. Now, I think Charlie is a much better character overall, but the only thing that kept Mickey from being dead last on here was the fact that I do think after he's revealed, he is handled a little better. I at least like his motivations as the killer. The fact that he's doing all of this just to get on trial so he can blame the movies shows just how unhinged his character is. But unfortunately, because everything they do with him before that isn't done nearly as well, so I just don't think his reveal is a very satisfying one. So I couldn't justify moving him up any higher than this. Alright, we're finally moving into the killers I actually like, and taking the bottom spot of them at number 7 is Mrs. Loomis. She's much better than Mickey, and I do like how it all comes back around and ties into the first movie with her being Billy's mother. This is a very Friday the 13th-esque killer reveal, and I like it. In some ways, I actually think she does better than Mrs. Voorhees, but a lot of that is because of the performance by Laurie Metcalf. I was always a fan of hers because as a 90s kid, I loved Roseanne. So that probably colored my opinions of her a little bit. But what holds her back from being one of the greats, for me personally, is how much I have to suspend my disbelief in order to even believe she's doing all of this. She dragged Randy into the van and kills him. I doubt that. She's a middle-aged woman and she's pretty small. And yeah, Randy's not a warrior by any means, but I find it hard to believe that even being caught off guard, he couldn't have put up more of a fight than he did. I also don't believe she was able to put that knife through the bathroom stall and kill Omar Epps' character at the beginning in the theater bathroom. And I also find it very hard to believe that nobody recognized her throughout this entire movie. I mean, she was all over that campus and she's a freaking reporter. I mean, did they not see her on TV? And I mean, sure, the surgery she had probably masked her from the general public, but The people who knew who she was should have been able to call it out. I mean, Sydney called it out immediately. And yeah, I know it's a movie and we shouldn't overthink this stuff, but considering how grounded the Scream movies try to make themselves, I can't help but to nitpick a little. Also, I'm kind of cheating here because unfortunately my opinion of this movie as a whole does color my opinion of her character just a bit. If it wasn't for Laurie Metcalf's stellar performance, I probably honestly wouldn't have liked her. Like, at all. And at number 6, we have Richie Kirsch. I do like him, and I also really like the movie he's in, but a couple of things do hold him back from being great, in my opinion. First, I think his character is kind of predictable, and not in a good way. Dewey calls it out right out the gate, and I know this is supposed to be kind of like Scream 2.0, so they wanted to make it the boyfriend hiding in plain sight, like they did in the first movie, but like I said, it was too predictable. The first one perfected this move, but unfortunately, because it had already been done and done so well, it's a move that shouldn't have been replicated because it's obviously going to fail. That's the type of thing you can only pull off once if you want it to be effective. Secondly, he's kind of whiny. Once his motive is revealed and his real personality comes out, he's actually pretty annoying. He's basically just a crybaby on the internet, except he's doing it in real life. He's definitely far inferior to his partner, who you will obviously see higher on this list. However, Jack Quaid's performance throughout the movie is good enough, though, that at least he portrays an unhinged psychopath pretty well, which does redeem his character a little bit in my opinion. Good enough anyways that he made number 6 on this ranking. But now we're getting into the top 5, and these are the characters I really like, especially my top 3. And coming in at number 5, just one spot above her partner, is Amber Freeman. There was a couple of variables that went into my decision to put her above Richie, and the first one being that she was just the more unhinged of the two. You'll see a pattern on this list. The more unhinged they make the killer, the more I'll probably like them. It definitely helps anyways. They were both motivated by toxic fandom, but she was also driven by the added fact that she lived in Stu Macher's house, which I think adds a pretty cool little layer to her character, but honestly, she's much less annoying than him as well. Where he comes off as kind of whiny, she is actually very assertive, and despite being small, she is definitely a fighter, right up until the end, and she probably takes more abuse than any other Ghostface of any other movie, even more so than Jill. I mean, she gets beat on by Sydney and Gail in the kitchen, and then set on fire, and still keeps on coming. It ultimately takes getting shot by Tara to put her down for good, but the biggest thing that probably puts her this high on this list is she also has the added bonus of being the one to kill one of our legacy characters. I mean, every other killer in the past has tried and failed to take out Dewey, and she's the one who finally does it. She successfully accomplished what none of her predecessors were ever able to. So, despite the fact that you have to suspend your disbelief a bit to even believe she's physically capable of killing Dewey, nonetheless, there has to be some respect for her in that regard. But coming in at number 4, and I know a lot of people are probably going to hate me and maybe even unsubscribe for putting him this high, but I'm giving this spot to Roman Bridger. Look, just hear me out. So, I do have some issues with him. For instance, he's a crybaby, just like Richie, but even worse, I think. And in this case, he's also a mama's boy with serious mother issues. It's almost hard to believe when you think about just how smart the guy is, though, which I'm going to elaborate on here in a bit. But another problem I have is that his character wasn't exactly handled very well in this movie at all. He has a very weak screen presence, so by the time you get to the third act, it doesn't feel earned at all. Even Sydney looks confused, which is another thing. He didn't have one single moment with her in this entire movie. So that is a little jarring when you get to it, but either way, no matter what your opinion of this movie or his character is, you have to give him some respect for the fact that he is not only the only killer on this entire list to do everything entirely on his own, but he's also the one who orchestrated all the events of the first movie, which had a domino effect and caused all the events of the second movie. And then, of course, all the events of the first 3 movies are directly responsible for motivating Jill. And without the events of the first 4 movies, we don't even have the stab movies, which are directly responsible for inspiring Richie and Amber. So basically, all of the events of all these movies can all be traced back to Roman. So, you can't deny the fact that this guy was a mastermind. So, for me personally, I think he easily deserves the 4th spot. So, I'm going to leave him right where he's at. But finally, here we are, top 3, baby. Let's do this. And coming in at number 3 is Stu Macher, one of the OGs. There's actually a lot of buzz around his character right now in light of these new movies, and rightfully so. He was such an important part of what made that first movie so memorable and epic. Of the 2 killers, he was the most energetic and, for me personally, was the least suspecting. And despite his demeanor, he's actually pretty intelligent. I mean, it's made clear in the movie that him and Billy both had a lot of input on the plan and how it was going to be executed. And not to mention, he was just such a fun character. It's really no surprise that people want him back so badly, and I think everybody, including myself, is interested to see just how much his character would have evolved over the past 25 plus years. But moving on to my number 2, and if you've done the process of elimination, you know who's left, and this was a very tough decision for me, guys. I'm not gonna lie, because on one hand, you have Billy. And naturally, your knee-jerk reaction is to make him number 1 because he was the first and the most iconic in terms of pop culture status, and for good reason. Skeet Ulrich knocked it out of the park with his role. But then on the other hand, you have Jill. She's just off-the-wall bonkers, and I have a blast with her every single time I watch that movie, and she never gets old. And she is responsible for making that third act so memorable. Honestly, if I could just make both of them number 1, I would, but that's unfortunately not how it works, so I had to make an uneasy decision. And ultimately, I decided that for me personally, I had to give my number 2 spot to Billy. And that's not me taking anything away from his character. Because honestly, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, they're both number 1. Jill just slightly, and I mean very slightly, beat him by a thin razor's edge difference. Reasons I'll get into more when I get to her spot, but Billy was iconic. I think most people pretty much agree on that. I think just about every Scream fan agrees with that. But he's also a mama's boy, much less annoying than Roman though. His character was also where they perfected the art of hiding the killer in plain sight and making the most obvious choice the least suspecting, because it was just so obvious. And then, of course, the chemistry between him and Stu in this film just popped. Their characters worked off each other so well, and that perfectly executed dynamic is what made them such a powerhouse duo. But Billy was the heart and soul of that duo, for me anyways, which is why I put him above Stu. And despite him not being my number 1, I still can't deny that anytime I think of Ghostface, Billy is kind of the poster child for that character. So I have nothing bad to say about him. He's a great and iconic character and pretty much a perfect Ghostface killer. He just didn't quite make my number 1. But at my number 1 is Jill Roberts. She is the culmination of basically everything I want to see in a Ghostface. First of all, her reveal completely blindsided me. I did not see that coming at all. She was easily the biggest surprise of any of these movies. She was definitely the most bonkers. Like I said, a few of these characters were clearly unhinged, but this chick is completely off her rocker and takes the cake in that department. And Emma Roberts just brings it to life so well. She quite literally just wanted to be famous, and she was jealous of Sydney. And basically just wanted to be Sydney. And I mean, if her plan had gone the way she wanted it to and everything would have been executed properly, she would have never even got caught. Like nothing would have ever been traced back to her because Charlie did all the killing and she framed Trevor to make them look like the next Billy and Stu. And she wanted her own life to mirror Sydney so much that she literally killed her own mom just to make that happen. And as I said, nothing would have been traced back to her, so her mother literally did not have to die. So that makes her, in my opinion, hands down the most evil Ghostface out of all of them. She's also a bit of a mastermind. I mean, she didn't have to do any of the heavy lifting in this movie. Like I said, Charlie did it all. But most importantly, she is the most entertaining of all of them. It's my favorite third act of any of these movies, and it's all attributed to her. So I'm very happy to put her right here as my number one. But anyways, that's it for this video, guys. I'd love to know how all of you would rank these characters, so go ahead and put your rankings down in the comments section and let's discuss it. Or you can find me on one of my socials, which are in the video descriptions of all my videos. In the meantime, go ahead and like and share this video. If you haven't already, please subscribe and I'll catch you guys on the next one.